My name is Henry Wallace. I'm 64 years old, and the day I buried Mary, my wife of 42 years, I discovered that my sons were total strangers. It was October 3rd, a gray Thursday in Austin, Texas, when I heard the words that shattered what was left of my heart after losing the woman I'd loved my entire adult life. Before I go on, please subscribe to the channel and hit that notification bell, because we have new stories every single day. Go ahead and click like and tell us in the comments what city you're visiting from. The funeral service had been beautiful, or at least that's what everyone said. The chapel at Oakwood Cemetery was filled with white flowers, Mary's favorite. I'd given the hardest speech of my life, talking about her infinite kindness, her infectious laugh, her way of making every day feel like a small adventure. My sons, Robert, who's 38, and Stephen, 35, had stood stoic during the entire ceremony, not shedding a single tear. After the burial, as people began to disperse, I felt dizzy. My doctor had warned me about my blood pressure, especially with the stress of grieving. I quietly stepped away from the group of well-wishers and sought refuge behind the family mausoleum. I needed a moment of solitude before facing the reception. That's when I heard their voices. "Well, the old lady finally kicked the bucket," Robert said, in a tone I'd never heard from him. "It was about damn time, brother. 5 years of wasting money on doctors and nurses for nothing." "The good news is now we can sell everything and split the cash," Stephen answered, and I could hear the flick of a lighter. He was smoking at his mother's funeral. "The house has to be worth a good few million. It's in Westlake, and the old man is so wrecked he won't put up a fight. We need to hurry before the old man marries someone else and screws us out of the inheritance," Robert continued with a dry laugh. "Although, looking at him, I don't think he'll last much longer. He looks finished." "That would be perfect, wouldn't it? Both of them gone and we get everything. I could finally pay off my gambling debts and you could save your company from bankruptcy." My world stopped. They weren't just celebrating their mother's death. They were wishing for mine. The sons Mary and I raised with so much love, to whom we gave everything, for whom we sacrificed so much, saw us as simple obstacles to an inheritance. With trembling hands, I pulled out my phone and called Patrick Murray, my lawyer and best friend since college. I whispered the situation and asked him to come immediately. "I'm 5 minutes away," he said, catching the urgency in my voice. I waited for Patrick to arrive, impeccably dressed in his black suit, briefcase in hand. I quickly explained what I'd heard. His face hardened. "Henry, it's time they knew the truth." We walked out from behind the mausoleum together. Robert and Stephen were still there, now checking their phones, probably looking up property values in the area. When they saw me, all the color drained from their faces. "Dad," Stephen started, quickly dropping his cigarette. "Mr. Wallace isn't alone," Patrick interrupted, using his courtroom voice. "I'm Patrick Murray, the Wallace family's attorney for 30 years, and I am the executor of Mary Wallace's estate. May she rest in peace." "We didn't know Mom had a will," Robert said, trying to regain his composure. "There are a lot of things you don't know," I said, feeling a strange calm. "Like, for example, that your mother heard you talk about her like this many times during her illness. The Alzheimer's didn't affect her as much as you believed. She had moments of lucidity, and in one of those moments, 6 months ago, she completely changed her will." Patrick opened his briefcase and took out a sealed envelope. "The official reading will be tomorrow in my office, but given the circumstances, Mr. Wallace has authorized me to share a few key points with you." My sons' faces went from shock to poorly disguised greed. They still thought they would inherit something. "First point," Patrick continued, "the house in Westlake is not in Mr. Wallace's name, nor was it in Mrs. Wallace's name. For the past 2 years, it has belonged to the Mary Wallace Foundation for Alzheimer's Care." "What?" Robert yelled. "That's impossible. We've lived there our whole lives." "Second point," Patrick didn't flinch. "Mrs. Wallace's bank accounts, investments, and additional properties, valued at approximately $3 million. I saw my son's eyes light up. Have been designated in their entirety to the same foundation, with one single exception." "This is theft," Stephen shouted. "You can't do this. We're her sons. We have rights." "The exception," I continued, looking them straight in the eye, "is $500 for each of you. The approximate cost of bringing you into the world at the hospital, adjusted for inflation. Your mother said that way. You're all square. This isn't over, Robert threatened. We'll contest that will. The Alzheimer's had her. She wasn't in her right mind. Patrick smiled coldly. That's what the videos are for. Mrs. Wallace recorded every one of her decisions with medical witnesses, certifying her lucidity. She also recorded other things, conversations you two had near her thinking she didn't understand, conversations about putting her in a home, about accelerating her death, about taking everything. The silence was deafening. A few family members still at the cemetery had drifted closer, drawn by the shouting. "Dad," Robert tried one last time, his voice now pleading, "we're your sons. Mom wouldn't have wanted this." "Your mother wanted exactly this," I answered, "and there's more, much more. But you'll find that out tomorrow if you have the courage to show up for the reading." I turned and started walking toward the cemetery exit. Patrick followed. Behind me, I could hear my sons arguing, blaming each other. "Mary, my love," I thought as I walked between the headstones, "your plan is in motion. And this is only the beginning." That night, in the empty house that still smelled of Mary's perfume, I sat in her favorite armchair with a glass of the wine we had been saving for our 50th anniversary. We had only made it to 42. With her journal in my hands, the one she gave me the day before she lost the battle with Alzheimer's for good, I relived our story. I met Mary in 1981 in a bookstore on Congress Avenue in downtown Austin. I was 22, working as a junior accountant at a small firm. She was 20, studying to be an English teacher. We both reached for the same book at the same time, East of Eden by Steinbeck. Our hands touched, and she laughed. That laugh would be my companion for the next 4 decades. "You read it first," she said with that mischievous smile, "but you owe me a coffee when you're done." 2 weeks later, we had that coffee. 6 months later, I was proposing with a ring that cost me 3 full paychecks. A year later, we were married in a modest ceremony at St. Mary's Cathedral. The first few years were hard but beautiful. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment off South Lamar. I worked during the day and studied at night to finish my business degree. Mary taught at a public school and came home with stories about her students, always full of hope despite the difficulties. Robert was born in 1985, after 2 years of trying and a miscarriage that almost destroyed Mary. I remember her face when the doctor said, "It's a healthy boy." She cried for hours from happiness this time. "Our miracle," she called him. He was a difficult baby, cried constantly, never slept. Mary quit her job to take care of him. I took every extra shift possible to make up for her lost income. I'd come home exhausted at 2 a.m. and find Mary rocking him, singing to him, with deep circles under her eyes, but always smiling. Stephen came 3 years later, in 1988, a calm baby, the complete opposite of his brother. Mary said he was her reward for surviving Robert's early years. By then, I'd gotten a better job, and we were able to move to a bigger place in Hyde Park. Mary went back to teaching when Stephen started preschool, but it was different. The years of motherhood had changed her. She saw every student as a potential child. She got too involved, worried about their problems, brought extra food for those she knew didn't have lunch. The 90s were our golden age. My career took off. I became a VP of finance at a multinational corporation. Mary was named department head at her school. We bought the house in Westlake, the one my sons now wanted to sell like a simple object. To Mary, it was more than a house. It was the home she had always dreamed of giving her children. Every corner had a story. The kitchen where Mary prepared those elaborate Sunday dinners, bringing the whole family together. The garden where she planted every tree, thinking of the grandchildren who would one day play under their shade. The study where she helped the boys with their homework, with an infinite patience I never had. But the problems started in their teens. Robert became rebellious, aggressive, started skipping school, talking back. Mary would cry at night, wondering what we'd done wrong. I stupidly thought it was a phase. All teenagers are like this, I told her, but Mary knew it was something more. Stephen, on the other hand, developed a bottomless ambition. At 15, he was already talking about money constantly, about what his friends at his private school had, about what we should have. Mary tried to teach him values, to talk about what was important in life, but he only saw dollar signs. When it was time for college, the differences sharpened. Robert studied law, more from our pressure than any passion. He dropped out in his third year to start a series of failed businesses that we always ended up financing. Stephen finished his business degree but used his diploma for get-rich-quick schemes that bordered on illegal. Mary suffered in silence. She wrote in her journal, "My sons have become strangers. They only come over when they need money. They look at me like I'm an ATM wearing an apron. Henry either doesn't see it or doesn't want to. But I know we did something wrong." The diagnosis came 5 years ago. Early onset Alzheimer's, the doctor said. Mary was only 57. I remember how she took my hand in the doctor's office and said, "Promise me you won't let me forget what's important. Promise me that when I can't remember, you'll remember for both of us." The first 2 years were manageable. Small memory lapses, minor confusion. Mary was still Mary, but she noticed something I refused to see. Our sons started visiting more often, but not for her. They came to size up the furniture, to ask about investments, about the will. One night, 3 years ago, Mary had a moment of crystal-clear lucidity. She called me into the study and said, "Henry, our sons don't love us. They love what they think they're going to inherit, and I need you to do something about it before it's too late." She told me her plan. It was brilliant, just like her. A plan that would not only protect our assets from our sons' greed, but would give them one last chance to redeem themselves. A final, posthumous lesson from the teacher she always was. "But I need you to be strong," she told me that night. "When I'm gone, when you hear what they really think, I need you to execute the plan without hesitation, for us, for what we built, for what really matters." I agreed, though I didn't fully understand. Now, after hearing my sons in the cemetery, it all made sense. Mary, even in her illness, had been wiser than all of us. I took the last sip of wine and turned to the next page of the journal. It was from last year, written in a shaky but legible hand. Today, Robert and Stephen talked about putting me in a home. They think I don't understand, but I understand everything. It hurts more than the forgetting. But I trust my plan. I trust Henry. True love always finds a way to win. Patrick Murray's office was on the 15th floor of a high-rise downtown. I arrived early that Friday morning, carrying a box of documents Mary had meticulously prepared. Patrick was waiting for me with fresh coffee and the serious expression he reserved for difficult cases. "Are they here?" I asked. "They're in the waiting room. They came with their own lawyer, Richard Stone. I know him, specialist in contesting wills." I wasn't surprised. My sons were always predictable in their greed. While we waited for the official time, my mind went back to the exact moment I noticed my sons had changed, or perhaps when I finally saw who they really were. It was 15 years ago. Robert was 23 and had just dropped out of law school. He came over on a Sunday, Mary's sacred day for family meals, but he wasn't there to eat. He came with a business proposal. He needed $200,000 to invest in an import company. He had all the papers, projections, charts. Mary served him lunch while he talked nonstop about ROI and profit margins. "Honey," Mary said gently, "don't you want to tell us how you are first? How's Claire?" His girlfriend at the time. "We broke up," he answered curtly. "She didn't understand my business vision. Now, about the loan." Mary and I looked at each other. Our son hadn't come to share his life with us. He'd come for a transaction. We gave him the money. Mary insisted. She said it was important to support him. 6 months later, the company was bankrupt. Robert never really explained what happened. Years later, I found out most of the money had been lost gambling. Stephen was more subtle, but just as painful. During college, he visited regularly, but it always ended with him auditing our finances. "Why aren't you invested in this? Why are you keeping money in the bank losing value? You should sell the house and buy condos to rent out." The day Mary told him the house was our home, not an investment, he replied, "Feelings don't pay the bills, Mom." I saw something break in Mary's eyes that day. The full transformation happened when they both got married. Robert to Patricia, a woman as ambitious as he was, who at our first family dinner asked how much our house was worth. Stephen to Andrea, who during our 40th anniversary party suggested we should get our wills in order to avoid future problems. The grandchildren never came. Both couples said children were too expensive and they preferred to enjoy life. Mary, who dreamed of being a grandmother, cried for months, but she never told them. She kept welcoming them with love, cooking their favorite meals, asking about their lives, and always receiving one-word answers. The Alzheimer's diagnosis was the catalyst that revealed their true nature. Robert's first question wasn't about treatments or how to help, but how much is this going to cost? Stephen got straight to the point. Have you considered a power of attorney so someone can manage your finances? During the 5 years of Mary's illness, they visited exactly 12 times. I counted. 12 times in 5 years. And on each visit, they talked to each other as if she wasn't there, arguing about the house, the accounts, the future. Mary heard them. I thought she didn't understand, but her journal reveals she caught everything. An entry from 2 years ago breaks me every time I read it. Robert and Stephen came today. They talked for 20 minutes about selling my piano, the one I inherited from my mother. They said no one plays it anymore. They don't know that Henry plays La Vie en Rose for me every night before bed, even though I can't ask him to anymore. My sons have become vultures, and I'm still alive. Henry, it's time, Patrick said, pulling me from my memories. We walked into the conference room. Robert and Stephen were sitting with their lawyer, a young man in an expensive suit with an arrogant expression. Patricia and Andrea hadn't come. Work, they'd said. Before we begin, their lawyer said, we want to make it clear that we will contest any testamentary provision made under the influence of Alzheimer's. Patrick smiled. Perfect. Then you'll be happy to know that the will I'm reading today was made 10 years ago, 5 years before the diagnosis, and updated annually with medical and notarial certification of full mental capacity. He pulled out a wax-sealed envelope. But before I read Mrs. Wallace's will, I must play a video she recorded specifically for this moment. The screen in the room lit up, and there was Mary, 6 months ago, on one of her good days, dressed elegantly, sitting in her favorite armchair, looking directly at the camera with those eyes that, though clouded by the illness, still held their intelligence. Robert, Stephen, she began, and I saw my sons shift uncomfortably in their seats. If you are watching this, it means I'm gone. And if Henry allowed you to see this video, it's because you fulfilled my predictions about your behavior at my funeral. Patrick had told me about the video, but this was the first time I was seeing it. Mary continued. For the last 5 years, I often pretended to be sicker than I was. I wanted to see who my sons really were when they thought I couldn't judge them. What I saw broke my heart, but it also gave me clarity about what I had to do. On the screen, Mary held up a notebook, her journal. It's all documented in here. Every cruel conversation, every plan to get rid of me, every argument about my inheritance while I was still breathing. But it also documents every time Henry bathed me, fed me, sang to me, and loved me when I could no longer love him back. Robert stood up. Turn this off. This is emotional manipulation. Sit down, Patrick ordered with authority. This is a legal part of the testamentary process, Mary continued, but I am a teacher. I always was. And a good teacher always gives one last chance to learn. That's why, my dear sons, my will has special conditions. Patrick will explain. Just know this. I love you, despite everything. And this final act is not one of revenge. It is one of love. The tough love I never knew how to give you in life. The screen went black. The silence in the room was absolute. I saw tears in Stephen's eyes, but Robert's expression remained hard. Patrick opened the will. I will now proceed with the official reading. I, Mary E. Wallace, being of sound mind and body, as certified by the doctors signing below, do establish the following testamentary provisions. But before I continue with the legal details, I need to go back 5 years, to the day that changed everything. March 14, 2019, when Dr. Berman uttered the word that would become our constant shadow, Alzheimer's. Mary took it with a bravery that still amazes me. While I was falling apart in the hospital parking garage, she was comforting me. Henry, look at me. It's still me. And we're going to fight this together every single day of clarity I have left. For the first few months, we kept the diagnosis a secret. Mary wanted time to process, to plan. That's when she began her secret project, documenting everything, not just her decline, but the reactions of those around her. She had cameras installed in the house without telling me. I only found out after her death when Patrick gave me the hard drives, hundreds of hours of footage. Mary observing, analyzing, taking notes in her moments of clarity. When we finally told Robert and Stephen, their reactions were telling. Robert immediately asked about health insurance and coverage. Stephen wanted to know if it was hereditary, worried about himself, not his mother. I hired Carmen, a wonderful nurse who became Mary's constant companion. Carmen told me later that Mary had asked her to keep a log of visits, who came, how long they stayed, what they talked about. "Your sons, Mr. Wallace," Carmen told me after the funeral. "They only came when you weren't here. And they didn't come to see Mrs. Mary. They came to inspect the house, to value things. One time I heard Mr. Robert call someone to ask how much the antique dining set was worth. The medical expenses were astronomical. Experimental drugs, cognitive therapies, international specialists. I spent over $500,000 in 5 years. My sons knew this, and their concern wasn't for their mother's health, but for the dwindling of their future inheritance. One night, 3 years ago, Mary had an extraordinary episode of lucidity. She called me into the study at 2 a.m. She was sitting at her desk, having been writing for hours. "Henry, I need you to do something for me. I need you to pretend that we're losing money, that the treatments are bankrupting us." "Why, my love?" "Because I want to see what our sons do when they think there's nothing left to inherit. It's the only way to know if there's any love left in them." I followed her plan. I started making comments about expenses, about possibly selling assets. I even mentioned the possibility of selling the house to pay for treatments. The reaction was immediate and brutal. Robert showed up the next day with brochures for nursing homes. "It's cheaper and more efficient," he argued. Stephen suggested alternative treatments he'd researched online, all of them considerably cheaper than what the specialists prescribed. Neither of them offered financial help, even though both maintained luxurious lifestyles. Robert had just bought a new car. Stephen had just completely remodeled his house. Mary saw it all. And in her lucid moments, she wrote, pages and pages of observations, reflections, pain, but also plans, strategies, final lessons. The decline accelerated 2 years ago. The lucid moments became rarer. But when they came, they were intense. She made me promise her again and again that I would execute the plan. She made me go over every detail, every document, every step. "Patrick has everything," she'd say. "Trust him, and when the time comes, don't hesitate. No matter how much it hurts, don't hesitate." The last 6 months were the worst. Mary didn't recognize me most of the time. She'd call me by her father's name, who died 30 years ago. But even in that fog, there were terrifying moments of clarity. One day, a month before she died, as I was bathing her, she looked me straight in the eye and said, "Henry, I know it's you. Thank you for loving me to the end. The others only see a decaying body. You still see Mary." Those were her last coherent words. The end came one morning in September. Peaceful, at home, in our bed, with my hand holding hers. Carmen was there, crying silently. I called my sons. Robert said he was in an important meeting. Stephen asked if he could come by later. They arrived after Mary's body had already been taken by the funeral home. Back in the conference room, Patrick continued reading. Having established the context of my illness and the behavior of my heirs during it, I proceed to detail the specific provisions of my last will. Robert and Stephen leaned forward, their greed barely concealed. Furfuro. First provision. To my beloved nurse, Carmen Gutierrez, who cared for me with love and dignity when my own blood abandoned me, I leave the sum of $200,000 in my complete collection of books, which she will appreciate as the teacher she is at heart. I saw Robert's jaw tighten. Second provision. To the Mary Wallace Foundation for Alzheimer's Care, which will be established with this will, I leave 70% of all my assets so that other families may receive the support that I had to buy. Stephen went pale. Third provision. To my sons, Robert and Stephen Wallace, I leave a chance. Not an inheritance, but a chance to earn one. Patrick paused, looking at me. I nodded. To access their share of the remaining 30% of my assets, they must meet the following conditions. The conditions are as follows, Patrick continued in a firm voice as my sons listened in stunned silence. First, they must work for 1 full year without pay at a care center for Alzheimer's patients. Second, they must attend family therapy with their father during that same period. Third, they must read and comment in writing on every entry from their mother's diary during her years of illness. "This is ridiculous," Robert exploded. "You can't force us to do this. It's extortion." "It's not extortion," Patrick replied calmly. "It's a perfectly legal testamentary condition. You can choose not to comply, in which case your portion automatically goes to the foundation." But there was more. Mary had left a second envelope, marked "The Secret." Patrick looked at me for permission. I nodded, even though I knew what was coming would be devastating. "Before continuing," Patrick said, "I must read this." He opened the envelope carefully. This letter was written by Mrs. Wallace 20 years ago, when her sons were 18 and 15, respectively. He began to read, and it was as if Mary's voice was in the room. "My dearest Robert and Stephen, if you are reading this, it's because the path you took was the one I feared most. There is something I never told you, something Henry doesn't even know, that I will reveal only if it is necessary for your redemption." "What is it, Mom?" What secret had Mary kept for 2 decades? When Robert was 5 and Stephen was 2, I died for 3 minutes. The air left my lungs. I never knew this. It was during a routine gallbladder surgery that got complicated. My heart stopped. The doctors revived me, but during those 3 minutes I had what they call a near-death experience. I saw my life. I saw your future. I saw what you would become if I didn't change how I was raising you. Robert and Stephen were petrified. In that vision, I saw you turn into exactly what you are today, empty men, obsessed with money, incapable of true love, and the blame was mine. I had raised you by giving you everything material, but without teaching you the value of effort, of love, of sacrifice. When I woke up, I swore I would change, but I was weak. Henry worked so hard to give us a good life, and I didn't want my sons to lack anything. So I kept taking the easy path. I gave you everything you asked for. I solved all your problems. I never let you face consequences. The letter continued, every word a blow. The real secret is this. You are not my only children. Before I met your father, I had a daughter, Sophia. I gave her up for adoption when I was 17. Her biological father abandoned me. My parents kicked me out of the house. It was the hardest decision of my life. My hands were shaking. Mary had never told me. I looked for Sophia when you were teenagers. I found her. She's a doctor, working with Doctors Without Borders in Africa. She has 3 children she is raising with love, but with firmness. She is everything you are not, generous, dedicated, selfless. Why am I telling you this? Because Sophia grew up with nothing material, but with adoptive parents who taught her values. You grew up with everything material, but I failed to teach you what was essential. The difference between Sophia and you is proof of my failure as a mother. Stephen was openly crying now. Robert kept his jaw tight, but I saw moisture in his eyes. If you are reading this, if you have reached this point, it is my last attempt to redeem you. Sophia doesn't know you exist. I didn't seek a relationship with her because I didn't deserve to interrupt her perfect life with my guilt. But she is the alternative heir. If you do not meet the conditions of the will, everything goes to her and her humanitarian work. Patrick pulled a photograph from the envelope. It was a woman of about 45, smiling as she hugged African children in what looked like a rural clinic. The resemblance to Mary was undeniable. "We have a sister," Stephen whispered. "You have a sister you don't know and who is worth more than both of you put together. And you have a father who is prepared to lose you for good if you don't change." Robert stood up. His lawyer tried to stop him, but he brushed him off. I need to think." "You have 72 hours to decide," Patrick said. "Comply with the conditions, or renounce everything." "And if we comply?" I pulled another envelope from my jacket. "I wrote this last night. It's my will. If you fulfill your mother's conditions, if you truly change, you will inherit everything of mine as well. An additional $42 million you didn't know I had." Their eyes widened in shock. But, I continued, if you don't comply, if you try any legal tricks, if you don't show a genuine change, everything goes to Sophia and the foundation. And believe me, after what I heard at the funeral, part of me is hoping you fail. Dad, Stephen began. Don't call me Dad, I cut him off. You lost that right when you celebrated your mother's death. If you want it back, you'll have to earn it. I walked out of the office, leaving them with their decisions. In the hallway, I leaned against the wall, shaking. Mary, even in death, was still teaching, still fighting for her sons. Carmen, the nurse, was waiting for me downstairs. How did it go, Mr. Wallace? Mary's plan is in motion, I replied. Now we'll see if our sons have any chance of salvation. That night, at home, I opened the safe where Mary kept her treasures. There it was, the only photo she had of Sophia as a baby, before the adoption. On the back, in Mary's youthful handwriting, my first daughter, my first love, my first sacrifice. May life give you everything I couldn't. There was also an unopened letter addressed to me. For Henry, when you discover my secret. I opened it with trembling hands. My love, forgive me for not telling you about Sophia. She was my personal cross to bear, my private pain. I didn't want you to carry my guilt, but now you'll understand why I was so weak with our sons. I was trying to make up for abandoning my first child. By giving Robert and Stephen everything, I deprived them of what was essential. Now, my last act of love is to try to save them from themselves. If it works, we will have raised 3 children, 1 we never knew but who makes us proud, and 2 we redeemed from beyond the grave. I love you eternally, Mary. At 3 a.m. on Saturday, my phone rang. It was Stephen. Dad, I need to talk to you alone, without Robert. We met at the 24-hour coffee shop near St. David's, where Mary had received her treatments. Stephen looked gaunt, as if he hadn't slept since the reading. I've been reading Mom's journal, he said without preamble, holding the notebook Patrick had given them. Every page is, God, Dad, how could we have been so blind? You weren't blind, I answered coldly. You were selfish. There's an entry from 3 years ago, he continued, ignoring my comment. Mom wrote about the day you sold her mother's ring to pay my gambling debts. I never knew that ring was the only thing she had from her mother. I thought it was old costume jewelry. It was worth $80,000, I said. It was a family heirloom from 1890, but it was worth more sentimentally. Your mother cried for 3 days after we sold it. You didn't even say thank you. Stephen buried his face in his hands. I want to do the year of service. I want to meet the conditions. But Robert, he's looking for a way to contest the will. He's hired 3 more lawyers. And you? I want to redeem myself, but there's something you need to know. Something about why I became like this. I looked at him, expecting another excuse, but what he said surprised me. When I was 15, I overheard a conversation you had with Uncle Albert. You were talking about investments, about millions. You said it was all for us to secure our future. You mentioned properties, stocks, accounts overseas. I became obsessed with that money that was supposedly going to be mine. I remembered that conversation. Albert had been advising me on diversifying investments. But you never told us anything, Stephen continued. We lived modestly while you were secretly building an empire. I started to think you were lying to us, that you had another family, that the money was for someone else. The money was for you, I replied. But Mary and I wanted you to learn the value of hard work first. I know that now. But at 15, it felt like a betrayal. And that seed of resentment grew into this. He gestured to himself with disgust. I decided to show him something only Patrick and I knew. I pulled out my tablet and opened an encrypted file. This is the true Wallace family B-roll. Stephen's eyes widened as I scrolled through the list. 15 commercial properties in Austin, all rented. A 30% stake in a supermarket chain, 2 hotels in the Hill Country, a winery out near Fredericksburg. Stock investments worth $8 million, accounts in Switzerland, Miami, and Hong Kong. The logistics company I founded, now valued at $20 million. Yeah, how much is there in total? He asked in a choked voice. $42 million, all of it legal, all documented, all planned for you. But Mom said there were only $3 million. Your mother controlled $3 million. It was her personal money, inherited and saved. My fortune is separate, and now you understand the weight of your decision. You meet the conditions, and eventually you inherit half of all this. You don't, and Sophia and the foundation get $42 million. Stephen was pale. Robert has no idea. No, and you won't tell him? This is his character test. If he only complies for the money, he will have failed anyway. Dad, Stephen said, tears streaming down his face, how did you build all this? I decided to tell him the whole truth. When your mother and I got married, I had a small transport company. 3 old trucks. I worked 20-hour days. Your mother taught. We saved every penny. But the real change came when your grandfather died. But Grandpa was poor. No, your grandfather was the secret owner of 75 acres in what is now the most expensive part of Austin. He'd bought it in the 40s for nothing. No one ever knew but me. I sold it off piecemeal. I reinvested. I bought properties in areas I knew would develop. Every decision I made thinking of you. When Robert needed that $200,000 for his failed business, I sold stocks that would be worth $2 million today. When you needed the bailout for your company, I mortgaged properties. I never told you because Mary insisted that easy money corrupts. She was right, Stephen admitted. We got corrupted without even having the money. Your mother was wiser than all of us. That's why her plan is brilliant. It's not just about the year of service. It's about you understanding the value of care, of selfless love, of sacrifice. Everything she gave you, and you never valued. My phone rang. It was Robert. I put it on speaker. Old man, we need to talk. My lawyer says the will is contestable. The condition of unpaid labor can be considered forced servitude. Robert, I said, tired. Don't call me old man. And tell your lawyer that Mary foresaw that too. There's an alternative clause. You can refuse the work and instead donate the equivalent of 1 year of your current salary to the foundation. What? That's $300,000 in my case? Exactly. Your mother calculated everything. You either give your time or you give your money, or you give nothing and you get nothing. This is blackmail. No, it's a lesson. Your last chance to learn what your mother tried to teach you your whole life, that there are things more valuable than money. I hung up. Stephen looked at me. I'm going to do it. I start at the Alzheimer's Center on Monday, and I want to go to therapy with you. Why? I asked, still suspicious. Because reading Mom's journal, I realized something. She wrote, "My sons think love is weak because I always gave in. But giving in isn't weakness when it's done for love. The real weakness is not knowing how to love. I want to learn how to love, Dad, before it's too late." For the first time since the funeral, I felt a glimmer of hope. Mary, even from the grave, was still working miracles. The following Monday, Stephen reported to the St. Joseph's Integral Care Center, which specialized in Alzheimer's patients. I went with him. The director, Isabel Morales, had been briefed by Patrick. "Mr. Wallace, Jr.," she said professionally, "you'll be working in the intensive care ward. Your duties will include feeding patients, cleaning them, and accompanying them in their cognitive exercises. It's not easy work." "I know," Stephen replied with a humility I'd never seen in him. Robert, meanwhile, had disappeared for 3 days. His wife, Patricia, called me, furious. "This is your fault. Robert is obsessed with that will. He spent $50,000 on lawyers. Do you know what it means to lose that inheritance? We had plans, financial commitments." "The dead have no obligation to pay the debts of the living," I replied, and hung up. On Wednesday, I received an unexpected call. It was Sophia, the daughter Mary had given up. "Mr. Wallace, this is Dr. Sophia Reed. Patrick Murray contacted me about Mary's will. I need to talk to you." We met at the same coffee shop where I'd spoken with Stephen. Sophia was the spitting image of Mary at 40. The same intelligent eyes, the same warm smile, the same dignified bearing. "I don't want the money," she said straight out. "I didn't know Mary. I have no right to her inheritance." "She looked for you," I replied. "She followed you from a distance. She was proud of you." "I know. Patrick gave me her letters, the ones she wrote but never sent." She pulled out a stack of yellowed envelopes. 30 letters in 30 years, one for every birthday. I recognized them. Mary used to write them, crying. She kept them in a box labeled, "For when I have the courage." "My adoptive parents were wonderful," Sophia continued. "They gave me love and education, values. But I always knew there was another woman who loved me so much. She let me go to give me a better life. Mary never forgot you. And I, her. That's why I'm here. I don't want the money, but I do want to meet my brothers. If you can even call two strangers who share my blood that. I told her about the will's conditions, about Stephen trying to redeem himself, about Robert fighting it. Can I meet Stephen? She asked. The meeting was on Friday. Stephen had been working at the Alzheimer's Center for 5 days. He arrived exhausted in his stained scrubs smelling of disinfectant. When he saw Sophia, he froze. You look so much like Mom, he whispered. And you look like the pictures of our grandfather, she replied. They sat across from each other, two siblings who were strangers, united by a mother who loved them in different ways. Why Doctors Without Borders? Stephen asked. Because I grew up with everything I needed, but nothing extra. My parents taught me that privilege comes with responsibility, that if you're lucky enough to receive, you have an obligation to give. Mom tried to teach us that, Stephen admitted, but we only saw what we didn't have, not what we did. Sophia took a photo from her wallet. 3 smiling African children. My kids, adopted, like me. The cycle of love continues. Mom would have been proud, I said. She was, Sophia corrected. In her letters, she always ended by saying, my 3 children, each perfect in their own way, each teaching me something different about love. That night, Robert finally showed up. He arrived at the house at 11 p.m., drunk, pounding on the door. Open up, you greedy old bastard, hiding all that money, hiding $42 million. I opened the door. Robert stumbled in. Patricia left me, he said, collapsing on the sofa. When she found out I might not inherit, she packed her bags and was gone in 3 hours. 10 years of marriage gone in 3 hours. If she left for money, she wasn't worth it. You don't understand, he yelled. I'm $500,000 in debt. I gambled. I made bad investments. I borrowed money that wasn't mine. If I don't get that inheritance, I'm dead. $500,000? I took money from clients, thinking I'd replace it with Mom's inheritance. Now the creditors are looking for me. Some of them aren't legal. I sat down across from him. My eldest son, a brilliant lawyer, reduced to this. I'll help you, I said finally, but with conditions. Anything. You will complete the year of service, you will go to therapy, you will read every single page of your mother's journal, and when you're done, if you have truly changed, I will pay your debts. Why would you do that? Because your mother made me promise I would give you every possible chance. This is the last one. Robert wept. For the first time since he was 10 and fell off his bike, I saw my eldest son cry. I hated her, he admitted between sobs. I hated her for being weak, for being simple, for not being the successful mother my friends had. And now I'd give anything to hear her say my name just one more time. On Saturday, the 3 siblings met for the first time. Robert, gaunt from the hangover and shame. Stephen, tired but with a new light in his eyes. Sophia, serene and compassionate. We are Mom's inheritance, Sophia said. Not the money, not the properties, us. And she left us one last task, to become a family. Patrick arrived with more documents. There's one more condition in the will I hadn't read. If all 3 siblings work together during the year of service, if they support each other, the inheritance triples. Mary had even anticipated Sophia appearing. Robert and Stephen looked at each other. Then they looked at Sophia. Would you work with us? Stephen asked. I have 6 months before my next mission, Sophia said. I could teach you what I know about real care, about unconditional love. 3 siblings, 1 year, one last lesson from Mom, Robert summarized. I accept. That night, alone in the house, I spoke to Mary's portrait. Your plan worked, my love. You brought them all together, even in death. You're still the best mother in the world. 3 months had passed since the start of the service year. The transformation was noticeable, but gradual. Every Sunday, the 4 of us met for dinner to share experiences from the week. Stephen had lost 20 pounds, but looked healthier than ever. Today, Mrs. Carmen confused me with her son, he shared during one dinner. She hugged me and cried for 20 minutes. I didn't correct her. I just held her back. Robert had deep circles under his eyes, but his gaze was clearer. There's this one patient, Mr. Lewis. He used to be a judge. Sometimes he has lucid moments and tells me about disputed inheritance cases. It's like the universe is trying to teach me something. Sophia guided them with infinite patience. Alzheimer's doesn't erase the person, she explained. It just clouds the access to who they are. Our job is to find windows of connection. One Tuesday, Patrick called me urgently to his office. "Henry, we found something. Mary left an additional safe deposit box set to be opened only 3 months after the start of the service year." Inside were videos, dozens of them. Mary had been recording messages for years. I gathered my children that night. The first video was from 10 years ago. Mary, still healthy, looking at the camera with determination. "My beloved children, if you are seeing this, it means you are fulfilling the conditions. This is the first of many messages. My real gift, the truth about your childhood, about your parents, about yourselves." For the next 3 hours, we watched Mary tell stories we had forgotten or never known. "Robert, do you remember when you were 7 and you gave your lunch to that poor kid at school? You did it for months without saying anything. I only knew because the teacher called me. That was the real you, generous and quiet." Robert was crying silently. "Stephen, when you were 5, you found a wounded bird in the garage. You secretly took care of it for weeks. When it died, you cried so hard you made yourself sick. That sensitive heart is still in there, under the layers of ambition. Sophia, my first child, I followed you from afar. I watched your medical school graduation, your wedding, the birth of each of your children. Every achievement of yours healed the wound of letting you go a little bit." There were videos for specific hard moments in the service year. Mary had anticipated every crisis. "When you feel like you can't go on," she said in one, "remember that I spent 5 years losing pieces of myself. And still, every day I found a reason to smile. You are stronger than you think." In another, more recent video, Mary already showed signs of the disease, but she was lucid. "Henry is bathing me right now. He doesn't know I recognize him. He's singing our song, La Vie en Rose, while he washes my hair. That is real love. Caring when the other person can't say thank you, loving when the other person can't love you back." But the most powerful video was recorded just 1 week before her death. Carmen, the nurse, had helped her. Mary, very frail, had a moment of perfect clarity. Looking straight at the camera, she said, "Robert, Stephen, Sophia, it's me, your mother. This might be my last clear moment. I need you to know, I forgive you. I forgive you for everything, for the cruel words, the absences, the lack of love. I forgive you because I love you. And true love always forgives. But I also need your forgiveness for not being stronger, for not teaching you better, for my own failures. Can you forgive me?" All 3 of them answered the screen as if Mary could hear. "Yes, Mom, we forgive you." The next document was devastating. Mary's complete medical history, including psychiatric evaluations I never knew existed. Patient presence with severe depression related to a perceived failure as a mother, one report from 8 years ago read. She believes her sons are emotionally distant due to her failures in their upbringing. "This is my fault," Robert said. "She was depressed because of us." "No," Sophia intervened, having read the full report. "Look at the next page." It was a letter from Mary to her psychiatrist. "Doctor, my sons are not bad people. They are the product of a society that values material success over emotional success. I contributed to that by not setting limits, by not teaching consequences. But it is never too late to learn. My illness will be my final teaching tool." There was more. Bank statements showing Mary had been secretly donating to charity for decades. Every time her sons asked for money for their failures, she donated the same amount to families in need. "For every $1 I spent on my son's mistakes," she had written, "I gave another $1 to someone who truly needed it. That's how I kept the universe in balance." A folder marked, "Do not open until month 6, looked at us, tempting. "We wait," Stephen said with a new maturity. Mom had her reasons. That night after my children left, I found one last video, addressed only to me. Mary had recorded it on our 40th anniversary in secret. "Henry, my love, if you're seeing this, it means my plan worked. Our children are healing. Thank you for trusting my madness. Thank you for loving me when I was impossible to love. Thank you for being the father they needed when I couldn't be the mother they deserved. In my next life, if there is such a thing, I promise to love you better, to raise our children better, to be the partner you deserved. But in this life, with all our mistakes, we were happy, weren't we? We were an imperfect but real family. I love you beyond death, beyond forgetting, beyond time. I cried until I fell asleep in her armchair, feeling her presence and her eternal love, her wisdom that not even Alzheimer's could erase. Month 6. The folder Mary had marked was waiting on the dining room table. My 3 children, because Sophia was as much my child as the other 2 by now, sat down solemnly. "Before we open it," Robert said, "I need to say something." He stood up and looked directly at me. "Dad, these 6 months have taught me more than my previous 38 years. I've cleaned, fed, and comforted people who won't remember my name tomorrow. And I understood. That's how you and Mom felt with us, giving everything and getting no recognition." Stephen added, "I've watched 3 patients die. I held them as they passed. I sang to them. I lied and told them their families were coming. I understand the value of just being present." Sophia smiled. "And I've gained 2 brothers, imperfect, complicated, but mine." I opened the folder. Inside was a legal document and a letter. Patrick, who had come for this moment, read it. "This is a codicil to the will. If my children reach this point, having completed 6 months of service, the following clause is activated. You may choose option A, continue for the full year and receive the full inheritance. Option B, stop now, having learned the lesson, and receive half. Or option C, reject all the money and keep only something more valuable." "What's more valuable than money?" Robert asked. Patrick brought out 3 small boxes. This. Each box contained an antique watch with an inscription. For Robert, time lost is mourned, time present is lived. I love you, Mom. For Stephen, true treasure is not counted in coins. I love you, Mom. For Sophia, distance does not diminish love, it purifies it. I love you, Mom. But there was more in the boxes. Each one contained a key. "Keys to what?" Stephen asked. Patrick smiled. "To 3 safety deposit boxes. Mary saved money from the day each of you was born, including you, Sophia, from when she learned of your existence. It's not much, about $50,000 for each of you, but it's clean money, earned from her tutoring, saved dollar by dollar. This money," I read from Mary's letter, "is separate from the will. It's my personal gift. Use it to start something new, something that makes you happy, something that would have made me proud." My children looked at each other. It was Sophia who spoke first. "I propose something. We continue the full year, not for the money, but because it's the right thing to do. And when it's over, we use the inheritance to expand the foundation, to create the best Alzheimer's center in the country." "But that's millions of dollars," Robert said. "So," Sophia replied, "what's the price of the lesson Mom taught us? What's the price of becoming a family?" Stephen stood up. "I agree, but on one condition. I want Dad to donate his fortune to the foundation too, all $42 million. I was breathless. "Are you sure?" Robert, the one who'd been $500,000 in debt, the one obsessed with money, said, "Dad, in these 6 months, cleaning toilets and feeding old people, I've been happier than I ever was as a successful lawyer. Money can't buy this." My decision was made. "There's something you don't know. Mary and I talked about this before her diagnosis. We dreamed of creating something that would last." I went to the safe and pulled out a folder I hadn't opened in 5 years. These are the blueprints. Mary designed everything. A comprehensive complex for Alzheimer's patients and their families. Residence, hospital, research center, green spaces. She wanted to call it Memory Villa. We calculated it would cost about $30 million to build and $10 million for the first 5 years of operation. Exactly what's in the inheritance and your fortune, Stephen calculated. "It's not a coincidence," I admitted. "Mary planned it all. But she needed you to come to this decision on your own." "Will there be a place for us?" Robert asked. "To work there, I mean. Not for money, but for a purpose." "Robert could handle the legal side," Sophia suggested. "Stephen, the finances. I could set up the medical protocols. And me? I asked. You, Dad, Stephen said, taking my hand. You'll be the heart, just like Mom would have been. Patrick cleared his throat. There's one last document. He pulled out a sealed envelope. Mary asked me to read this only if you all chose the path of service over money. He opened it carefully. My beloved husband and children. If you are hearing this, my life had meaning, not because of what I accumulated, but because of what I planted in your hearts. Henry, I leave you free to rebuild your life. My children, I leave you united as I always dreamed. Memory Villa is not my legacy. You are. Build that place, but more importantly, build meaningful lives. Alzheimer's stole my memory, but it could not steal love. That lives in you now. Make it grow. That night, the four of us signed the documents. We donated everything to the foundation. Patrick, who had been Mary's executor, then revealed his own donation. $5 million he'd earned in his career, inspired by Mary. Your wife, he told me, saved more lives with her death than many doctors do in a lifetime. 6 months later, on the first anniversary of Mary's death, we laid the first stone for Memory Villa. Hundreds of people came. Mary's former students, patients from the center where my children worked, families affected by Alzheimer's. Robert had paid off his debts by selling every material thing he owned. He now lives in a modest apartment, but he smiles more. Stephen and his ex-wife, Andrea, had reconciled, not for money, but for real love. Sophia had decided to stay in Texas, setting up her practice here. And I, at 65, had found a new purpose, making Mary's last dream a reality. At the ceremony, a children's choir, former students of Mary's from decades ago, sang La Vie en Rose, and I swear I heard her, Mary, whispering in the wind, "Well done, my love, well done." Epilogue. 2 years have passed since that Sunday, which began with the most hurtful words and ended with the greatest lesson of our lives. I'm writing this from my office at Memory Villa, which opened its doors 6 months ago. From my window, I can see the gardens Sophia designed, inspired by sensory therapy, where patients walk with their families. The path wasn't easy. There were times during construction when we doubted, when costs soared, when permits were delayed, when the sheer scale of it seemed impossible. But every time we faltered, something of Mary's would appear. Once it was a former student of hers, now an architect, who redesigned the plans for free. Another time, a contractor whose mother had Alzheimer's offered materials at cost. Hundreds of people Mary had touched in her life showed up to help. Robert completed his year of service and then went back to school for gerontology. He now runs the legal aid department at Memory Villa, specializing in protecting seniors from financial abuse by their families. The irony is not lost on him. Every case I win, he told me yesterday, is a small redemption. His ex-wife, Patricia, tried to come back when she heard about the project. Robert gently refused her. I don't hate you, he told her, but I can't be with someone who loved me for what I had, not for who I was. He's now dating Carmen, one of the nurses from the center, a simple woman who loved him first when she saw him cleaning up after a sick patient without complaining, when she saw him hold a dying patient's hand all night. Stephen became the most creative CFO I've ever known. He works miracles with the budget, securing donations from impossible places. His greatest achievement, convincing pharmaceutical labs to donate medicine in exchange for research participation. He and Andrea are starting over. We're different people now, he explained. They're expecting their first child. They'll name him Charles if it's a boy, Mary if it's a girl. Sophia splits her time between Memory Villa and short medical missions. Her adopted children, now teenagers, come every summer from Africa. They have adopted their uncles as their own, filling the void of the grandchildren Mary never got to see in her lifetime. Grandma Mary would have loved this, her eldest Samuel said while helping in the garden. He's right. The center currently houses 80 patients, but it's not just a nursing home. It's a place of life. There's constant music. We've found that many patients who can't remember their own names can sing entire songs. There's art, gardening, cooking. Families can stay as long as they want. There are no visiting hours. Last week we had our first significant recovery. Mr. Albert, in the early stages, responded so well to the integrated treatment that he was able to return home. His family wept. So did we. But the real miracle happened a month ago. A woman came asking for me. She was in her 60s, elegant, but with deep, tired eyes. "Mr. Wallace," she said, "my name is Isabella Miller. My mother has advanced Alzheimer's. I've visited every center in the state. When I heard the story of Memory Villa, of your wife, of your children, I needed to tell you something." She took me to her car. In the back seat, an elderly woman was dozing. When I looked closer, my heart nearly stopped. It was Lucy Fisher, Mary's first friend, her college roommate. They had a falling out 30 years ago, a silly fight neither could quite remember. "My mother talked about Mary constantly," Isabella said. "Even with the Alzheimer's, she asks for her. She doesn't know Mary passed." We admitted Lucy that same day. We put her in the most beautiful room, the one with the view of the rose garden I planted in Mary's memory. Sometimes Lucy has lucid moments. Yesterday was one of them. She looked at me and said, "Henry, where's Mary? I need to apologize for that silly fight." I took her hand. "Mary forgave you a long time ago, Lucy, and she would be so happy you're here." "I always knew Mary would do something great," she said before drifting back into the fog. "She was always the best of us." This morning, as I was making my rounds, yes, at 67, I still make rounds, I found Robert reading from Mary's journal to a group of patients. Stephen was playing the piano, that melody Mary loved. Sophia was checking on each patient with the dedication of someone who sees her own mother in each of them. In my office, I have the last page of Mary's journal framed. Her writing is shaky but legible. "Henry will find this when I'm gone. I want him to know we didn't fail. Our sons got lost, yes, but anything lost can be found. My illness is not a punishment. It's a tool. It will force them to look, to see, to feel. And when they do, when they truly see the pain of others, they will remember love. Because love is never forgotten. It only gets cloudy. And like the fog, it eventually lifts." She was right. As always. Tomorrow is the 2nd anniversary of her death. We'll have a ceremony in the gardens. Everyone who knew her, who loved her, who she saved without even knowing it, will come. My sons will talk about the mother they rediscovered. I will talk about the wife I never stopped loving. And somewhere, I know Mary will be smiling, knowing her last plan, her posthumous lesson, worked perfectly. She transformed our greed into compassion, our selfishness into service, our indifference into love. She taught us that the true inheritance is not what you leave behind when you die, but how those you leave behind choose to live. Memory Villa isn't just an Alzheimer's center. It's the living will of Mary Wallace, a teacher to the end, a mother beyond death, and a wife for eternity. And every time a patient smiles, every time a family finds comfort, every time my children, all 3 of them, work together for something bigger than themselves, Mary wins. Her memory lives on, not in the mind that Alzheimer's stole, but in every act of love her death inspired. That is her true legacy, and it is priceless.